Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Powerful Women. Powerful women, please join me on stage.
Powerful women. Hello. So my
very last one.
Which order do we go?
Very good. While we all get seated and while you get seated, I'm going to tell you about this special zone we are going to create between here and the stage and here and the internet and anybody who's watching online. This is a safe zone. It's an honest zone. No judgment is allowed. Because if we're talking about they're talking about being powerful women, I don't want you to say, oh, they're so full of themselves. They're so arrogant. Why are they saying all that stuff? Why aren't they a little bit more self-deferential? We are not doing self-deferential today. Right? We're just going to be very honest. We're not going to pretend that we're not good at stuff, that we don't have amazing skills, but don't judge. This is an hour when people can actually talk about the real power, the influence that they have. So, we only have an hour. We have to get started.
An hour is long.
Graça Machel is the founder of the Graça Machel Trust. Graça, tell us about the way people describe you, the way you've heard yourself described.
Mama. I'm Mama Machel.
Oh,
yes. That is very true.
That's nice. Nothing else?
Because I'm a social activist, right? And instead of describing all the kind of things I do and I don't do, I say, I'm Graça, I'm a social activist, and if there is a quality which I claim and I'm proud of, is to be mother. So at least in Africa, most of people address me as Mama Machel.
Mama Machel. Cecile Richards is president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Federation of America.
Great.
I am looking forward to how people describe you.
Not mama. That's something to aspire to.
Sure.
Yes. I was thinking about this, that from a very early age, I think in 7th grade, I was described as a troublemaker, and that's probably been my consistent, that's been consistent throughout my life. I know we were talking earlier, at some point recently, someone in the White House said that I was difficult to deal with, and I wear that proudly because that was really in response to the fact that we now have all women in America covered for birth control, and that was because we were troublemakers. So, and I think just sometimes as women, we I think too often want to be liked, or we want to be popular, and I think sometimes we just have to be better at being troublemakers.
Tawakkol Karman is the Nobel Peace Laureate. She's a co-founder and president of Women Journalists Without Chains. She is from Yemen. How do people describe you? I've heard a couple of descriptions, actually.
Yes, I know.
Do you want to share them with us?
The most popular thing is the Iron Lady, and also the Mother of Revolution. Yeah, this is the famous name, that people,
Mother of the Revolution. That is the mother of all descriptors, right? Do you carry that well, or are you uncomfortable with that?
It's a responsibility, because really people describe me and feel that I am the Mother of Revolution, and they want me to continue with them the rule under we achieve all the goals of the peaceful revolution that we did. So it's a great responsibility. Yes, I am the mother of the revolution, and I will be the mother of nations.
Okay.
Owning it! Toyin Saraki is the founder and president of the Wellbeing Foundation in Africa. Welcome, my sister.
Thank you.
Now, I can only imagine how a Yoruba woman would be described. We're the same tribe, actually. So I'm thinking, what would people say about you? What do they say about you?
You know, I think it really depends on if the person has met me or not. So people who haven't met me tend to say the classic Yoruba thing. First of all, they see me as a chattel, so they describe me as the wife of, the daughter of, the student of, anything else but giving me my own rights. And then when people meet me, I think they pretty much know what I stand for. So they just call me Toyin. And I don't think they're brave enough to describe me to my face.
And finally, Helle Thorning-Schmidt is the CEO of Save the Children International. And if you're Danish, I think you probably know that she's the former Prime Minister of Denmark, right? Okay. No introduction needed. Now, interesting ways of describing you. What have you heard? What gets back to you?
Well, I think I've been called everything from Prime Minister, which is very nice, but to Gucci Helle, to all kinds of things. I mean, when you're in politics as many years as I've been in lead of my party for more than 10 years. Now I'm a CEO of Save the Children. When you're in politics, people tend to be very harsh and calling you all kinds of things. So I've been called everything, but I think people are a little bit more polite now that I'm working with a social impact organization like Save the Children, and I'm an advocate for children, and I think people respect that a lot.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Graça Machel, take us back to when you were a school teacher. Were you a good school teacher?
Not for a long time, actually, because I was called then to perform other responsibilities, like become Minister of Education at the age of 28. Wow. So I did not have much time to be a teacher, and I don't think I would have much to tell about it. But I would have a lot to say of my time of being the first Minister of Education after independence, the only woman in a cabinet where, to make things worse, the head of the cabinet was my husband. So it was one of the challenging moments in which I would have to keep the position of him as a head of state, but then at home we'll discuss issues like husband and wife. Anyway, that's the story of how I started to be engaged socially.
So, if you were just in your 20s, did you have any clue what you were doing as education minister?
No, I did not know. I ended up in that position because immediately after our independence, there were not many people who had been trained in Mozambique. And I was not even given a choice. I was told to do this. And I said, I'm not prepared. And I said, who has been prepared? Because it was the first government of free Mozambique. None of us had been minister before. So we all have been asked to learn while we are listening to people, we are engaging, and we will. So that's how I became minister. And to tell you the truth also, today, one of the way people call me is that I'm an advocate for child rights and women's rights. It was precisely my experience as Minister of Education which taught me to look into children as a special group. And even to begin to say, you can't develop a system of education if you don't bring the girl child to the center. I had to establish, for instance, a collection of information which had to be disaggregated by gender from every single school in the country, even by class. So I knew in first grade how many children, how many girls in every single school. And every 6 months we'd go back to check how many have dropped, particularly girls, how many they dropped, etc. So you learn as you are being thrown into a situation where you have, to challenge yourself to understand what it means to lead in a situation like that.
Tawakkol just looked at me. She looked at me like, can I ask a question? Of course you can. What did you want to ask?
To ask whom?
We're in the moment.
Oh my God.
Because that education link was really important for you too. And growing up in
of
Yemen,
course, the education
it's challenging.
It's a really most important thing that we work for and struggle for. Why did we make and why did we call for the change? Why did we call for tyranny to leave the authority? Because the ignorance was everywhere, and also because the disease was everywhere, and also because of the lack of development, the war everywhere. So yes, we did a lot of things to make. I am educated, and because I am an educated person, I could play a good role in my country. I could convince my country, my society, to raise the flag of peace instead of the violence. This is the result of education. And that was the big challenge that faced me as a woman and as a Yemeni. How can I convince Yemeni people to raise the flower in front of all kinds of the violence of the tyranny? And yes, with women around me, with the youth around me, we could convince the Yemeni women, Yemeni people to throw more than 70 million pieces of weapons and go to the street, just raising the flowers, just chanting and singing, peaceful, peaceful, our revolution is peaceful, please go, we want better life, we want better education, we want better health, and we want war to stop. So that was a result of education.
I was trying to imagine what you were like as a little girl. Were you always standing on the table making speeches?
By the way, I didn't understand you very well because my English isn't very strong. So speak quietly.
I was imagining what you were like as a youngster. Were you always making speeches, campaigning?
I think this is my rule. I feel so proud, and I feel, yes, sometimes I feel tired, but this is my way to tell the people that we are women in Arab people, in Arab countries, that we are strong enough to free our countries. So I am here, I do a lot of speeches, I do a lot of efforts inside my country and outside my country to tell people, don't believe to the tyranny. Don't believe to the terrorists. They have to listen to my voice. I am the voice of the people who are struggling and sacrificing for sustainable development agenda. So this is the voice that you should know. We are not weak as a woman. We are not weak as a woman that wears scarf or without scarf. We are strong enough to make a good word. So I think this word belongs to me, as well as belong to every human being. So I should do something, and this speeches, this sacrificing, I've been in the prison many times, I've been threatened, the tyranny tried to kill me many times, but that didn't stop me. That gave me more encourage, more power for free my country and for free all the world from the tyrannies, from the corrupted, from the terrorism. So please listen to our voice, the voice of women like me who sacrifice in their societies.
Great.
Do you feel that vibration back here, panel?
Yeah.
What's going on?
We're right behind you.
We have a revolution up here. Whoa, I actually felt, did you feel it?
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. All
Very
right,
powerful.
thank you. Calm thoughts.
I can chant now, then you can chant after me.
All right, we'll come back. We just need to heart rate to go back to normal again. Cecile, take us back 10 years, which is when you actually joined Planned Parenthood. What was that interview like?
What was the interview
Yeah,
like?
they're like, are you going to be nice and quiet and not cause any trouble and friction? I mean, what was the interview?
Well,
Or the process?
I think the important thing maybe wasn't the interview, but was just a decision that was made by the organization that we are a big healthcare provider in the U.S. We're the biggest reproductive healthcare provider, and that has been always an important role. We turn 100 this year, which is amazing to think that we've survived 100 years in the U.S. But what the interview was about, because I was sort of an unlikely person to come to Planned Parenthood or for them to choose me in this role, was that we needed to build our movement strength back, that it wasn't good enough to be a healthcare provider, because right now we're being limited from being able to actually provide access to services because of the politics. And so that's really what we set about doing over the last 10 years at Planned Parenthood, was to become not only a very high quality, very affordable healthcare provider to millions of people every year, but also to be a kick-ass movement organization in the country. And I feel like we have slowly but surely done that by investing in a whole new generation of young leaders, which is extremely important, and it's so great there's so many young people here at this conference, because I think young people, not only in the US, but globally, are going to change the world. But it also has meant we have developed some political strength through the Action Fund that we have never had before, and that's how we get things like birth control coverage in America, is by having a fighting army.
You come from a political family. I'm wondering if you actually just were born a Democrat.
Was I born a Democrat?
Yeah, I mean, did you just come out of the womb and you were a Democrat, you were organizing the other kids in the nursery?
Well, I was born an organizer. I mean, definitely my family was into civil rights movement, the social justice movement. I mean, that's just, you know, the dinner table wasn't where you ate, it's where you organized precinct lists for whatever campaign was going on. But I will say, and I think that is different than being a Democrat in the US. I think that being a social change organizer is just, I was really privileged. But it's really such an honor here to be here with you, because actually my first real campaign was going away to college and fighting for the divestment from our university in South Africa. And that really taught me so much about organizing. And in fact, I missed my graduation because I had to unfurl the banner from the second floor window about divestment. And I think it's a lesson about organizing, which is sometimes we think organizing, you know, that social change happens immediately, and it doesn't. But it was incredible because our university did divest, Graça, and it was such an honor to come back 30 years later when Nelson Mandela got an honorary degree from my university, because I think it showed that the long arc of history, it moves towards social justice, it moves towards a better place, but sometimes it takes a while to get there. So.
There's a moment when you, Toyin, you knew that you were going to be an activist, and that moment is a very personal, very tragic moment. I know you've told that story before, not probably in front of so many people, but I know it's really critical to where you are today. Will you take us through that journey?
Well, yeah, I'm probably the most unlikely activist. I really was not brought up to speak out. I was brought up to be in the background, but to help and be a facilitator, and I was really good at that. And then I was pregnant, and I went to Nigeria, and it was just before a presidential election. So my father-in-law, who was a politician, was running for president, and the night before my wedding, he was grabbed and clapped into jail. And my blood pressure skyrocketed, and I found myself in hospital. I was having twins, and it was 28 weeks and 3 days. So one died, and the other one struggled to live, and I struggled for my life as well. So from my bedside, you know, I was reaching out all over the world, using my education, using my goodwill, using the people I knew to try and get the equipment that I wanted. And I knew that I needed, even in the labor room, I was negotiating. You know, I'm supposed to have steroid injections. Please give me steroid injections. There were some funny moments. Like, I remember turning around when my surgeon was coming in, because I had been told that I'd read all the books and I'd heard about an epidural. So I sort of heaved my belly across and turned my back, and I said, you know, it's supposed to be the third vertebrae. And he said, what? And I said, the epidural. And he said, oh, don't be silly, we don't have that here. Push. You know, and I was like, well, I can't push. I'm expecting twins, and they're 3 months early. They will be damaged, you know, if I push. And he said, look, push. But I was very lucky at the same time, because that was First Consultants Hospital, which is actually the hospital that fought back Ebola in Nigeria. So the day after I delivered, and they didn't tell me my baby was dead. I had to kind of work it out for myself because nobody would look me in the eye. But somebody else delivered in the area It's a downtown part of Lagos. I don't know if you know Obalende. And somebody else delivered in Obalende, and it's not an area for rich people, even though the hospital was there and my father's office was next to the hospital. So they brought the baby to the hospital just wrapped in a towel. The umbilical cord was still attached. And the people in the hospital said, no, they can't look after the baby because they couldn't pay. You know, they didn't have the money. And I was sitting there praying for my own child, working out that one child had died. And I remember, I had saved, I had prepared for birth, even though it was early. So I had enough money for 2. And I said, please, just look after this child. You can put it on my bill. And then I realized, it's always brothers, people die because they don't have money. And then people die because they don't have information. People die because they don't know how pregnant they are, or the doctors don't believe how pregnant they are. And I realized many years later that it all starts and finishes with information. Yeah. And so that's why I wrote a health record for Nigeria. And I strongly believe that a woman's health rights should be in her own hand. And I'm still fighting for that. I don't know what to say. I was never supposed to raise my voice. I was taught to speak in hushed tones that only the person next to you should hear.
But obviously nobody really knows you because that would be impossible for you to do. Like me. So, Helle, in the book that you're about to write about your life at some point.
Yes, not quite now.
The most exciting chapter so far would be what?
Well, I'm always engaged in the future, but I am proud of what I have achieved. I was the first woman to be a leader of my party. I was the first woman to become prime minister in my country and serve my country. And when you're in it, you never actually think of it like that. But then you realize afterwards that I meet a lot of girls, young girls, 13, 12, 14, that are very inspired by what I have done. And even though you told us we cannot be hiding behind anything today, and I think we have to be, I allow myself sometimes to be proud of that, because I see that it inspires girls, and I want girls basically to be inspired by other women, and to know that there's nothing that should limit them. They should know. Some of the people always ask me, who do you admire most? Who do you admire most of the people you have met? I'm telling you, the people that I admire most are people who have broken out of the path that was there for them, like you have. You just told us that story. Girls who have said, no, I'm not going that way, I'm departing a little bit. It is always hard for them because family and religion and traditions and how you do things are actually shaping a lot of girls' life. But if one of them breaks out, they can change the world, and that is what I admire. And that's what made me move on, say yes, because this is what I admire, girls that break out.
Let me... All right, so I think we can just enjoy the moment here, enjoy where you are right now. And that first time that somebody said, yes, Prime Minister, what was that like? Oh my goodness.
I forgot to think about it. Because when you're moving and when you're taking decisions, you forget to think about it. But I will force myself to think more about these situations and be in the situations. Last week I went to Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a very, very poor country. But even in poor countries, you can create little havens of places where girls and boys can live a good life. In the slum of Freetown, you have areas where people actually shouldn't be living. In there, you can still create a little school where girls will be telling me what I ask them, of course. I always ask girls, what do you want to be? And these girls, they want to be bank managers and lawyers and all kinds of things. And I'm just hoping that some of these dreams will happen before they get pregnant. Because in this area, I think it's 40 or 50% that get pregnant as teenagers. And that is why all the work that we are doing should help these girls at least get the knowledge of how you get pregnant, how you prevent you get pregnant, how you can wait, and what is at stake, and what they can achieve if they don't get pregnant but actually finish their school instead. And this is why I'm working for Save the Children. I want to teach children how to live their lives. I want to teach girls how they can empower themselves by understanding life skills that they don't even know about, and that is very meaningful. So you ask me, what do I remember most? I'm in the future, and I'm part of changing those girls' lives, and I'm proud to do it with these fine women up here with me.
I want to add something. Mrs. Prime Minister, I am so proud to be with you, and really, when I see, a person like you that you are here in Denmark and you said, I am the first Prime Minister, for me it shocked me. It shocked me a lot, because I'm struggling for women's rights in my country. And for me, I am shocked a lot because until now, there is no woman in the leadership of the United Nations. There is no Secretary General of the United Nations. For me, as a woman who struggles for women's rights, I am so shocked because the United States doesn't have women until now to be president. But inshallah, it will be very soon. Why I'm saying this? I'm saying that women's rights, women's existence in the political life is less all around the world. But there is differences between power country, rich countries, than development country. But it's really, most of the world see to the women that they have to play traditional role. And now they told me that with my peaceful revolution, they asked me, where is women in your country? We are struggling for women's rights. We are struggling for democracy rights. And here we have the first prime minister in Denmark after all this freedom and rights. And you want Yemen to have women now to be prime minister or to be president? You want, yes, this is true. And they told us, okay, you create the revolution and you have to make the democracy at the same year. Is that fair?
Yeah, of course not.
Is that fair? And you know how much price that you pay for this moment to be prime minister? How United States pay a big, and I wish Hillary Clinton to win. I really wish, because that is the victory for all women around the world.
So Tawakkol, take a moment, take a breath.
Yeah.
Because I need you to last to the end of this
will...
session. So just give me a moment, because I actually looked on your Twitter feed, Cecile, and it says, #I'm with her.
Yes.
And that was the last tweet I saw that you sent out there. So when and you talked about Planned Parenthood being a movement, and also it's a service at the same time. Is that the power of it? Is that your power, being able to merge those two together?
I mean, Planned Parenthood, it was started as a movement, actually 100 years ago, and I think it's important because I know folks ask often about, like, oh my God, there seems to be a lot of controversy about Planned Parenthood. There has always been controversy about Planned Parenthood. I mean, we have a very proud history, and I'll get to your point, which is 100 years ago, our founder, a young nurse, opened up the first illegal birth control clinic, was thrown into jail 10 days later, and taught all of her fellow inmates about birth control. And that's sort of how we began. And every single thing that we've gotten in the US, the right to birth control, was a woman arrested in Connecticut for handing it out. The right to an abortion, a young 27-year-old woman who argued before the Supreme Court for that right. Every single thing we've gotten, it's because we've organized and we've fought for. And I think to your point, Prime Minister, it is incredibly important because you look at all the progress that women have made economically, educationally, professionally in the US. You can mark it from the day they began to be able to control their own lives and control their own bodies. We're now half of the students in the US, we're half of the workforce, we're a majority in many master's programs. We have 20 women in the United States Senate, though we need 50. And we have 3 women on the Supreme Court for the very first time in our history. And yes, by God, I believe we're going to elect a woman president of the United States. And that is... But there is no way any of that progress would happen without women having the ability to control their bodies. And So for Planned Parenthood, we have a part of Planned Parenthood, the Planned Parenthood Action Fund, which does endorse candidates, that does work hard. We actually, this year, we will target 5 million voters.
I'll slow you down a minute, because that is controversial.
It's controversial.
That is
highly controversial.
I can imagine, I would love to lift you all up and take you to America and know how apoplectic people would be to hear that you're endorsing candidates as well as providing health services for women. They would be freaking out. That emoji with the steam coming out the nose.
They do freak out. Yes.
That's it.
But it's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's absolutely so important, because if we don't get involved in politics and we don't get involved in who's running government, then all we can do is sit back and wait to see what other bad law they pass. And we have had incredible, I mean, it's outrageous, just outrageous. And I do think that my hope in this election, and I'm now speaking with my, I guess, electoral hat on, is that not only I believe Hillary Clinton will be elected president of the United States, and I think it's incredibly important for just a whole host of reasons, not only reproductive access, but I actually believe women will elect Hillary Clinton president of the United States. And for the first time, women will get credit. And that is not only women, but the most reliable voters for President Obama when he was reelected were women of color in the United States of America, and they have never gotten credit for that fact. So I think it's a real opportunity.
I'm looking at Graça, who's sitting there so demure, but when things have to get done and people need them to get done, they come to you in specific areas. Are you aware of the power that you have? Do you think of it like that?
Well, the notion of power, it varies from other people. For me, I do not hold any position power. My power, if I can accept, comes from, I have very strong beliefs. And when I believe in something, I can convince people, even in situations where you would say there are intractable issues. By the way, you laughed when I say I prefer to be treated as mama. One of the advantages I have as mama is because I can speak to anyone.
Yes.
Anyone.
Yes.
I would ask that I want to see you, I have this, and they will find the time to listen to me. Yep. So that is very important, because
that's power.
You play also, yes, you play also with how people perceive you. If I say I'm a social activist, I want to see you, so what? There are many hundreds and thousands of social activists, but it's Mama Machel who wants to speak to you, and it makes a difference. The second one I want to say about this issue of power is, I know that when I believe in something, I'm very persuasive. I can really, turn your mind and
right,
to
so
say,
we're all
for you to come to my
We're all
camp.
wanting to hear an example.
You want an example?
Yes.
Let me give you one.
Good.
I leave Sierra Leone, when we were speaking of Sierra Leone, I was representing the Secretary General in Children in Conflict. I leave Sierra Leone after I had been in a feeding scheme. And at a certain point, I come across a mother who has her child, or maybe about 10, and the child is in critical situation. The two of us as women, we would look into the eyes of each other, and we knew this child is not going to survive. Is not going to live until the following day. I left that feeding center in tears. I was so angry that this is being done to children. I went back to New York and I said, I want to speak to Security Council. They said, Security Council? No, you can't. I said, why? They said, because you are an individual, you are expert, only countries can speak in Security Council. I said, I need to speak to that Security Council. I do not know how you're going to do it. Fortunately, at the time, Botswana ambassador came to me and said, Mama, I know a way you can speak to Security Council. I said, what is it? I said, they will not allow you to go inside the place of Security Council, but we are going to move them to next door and you speak to them. I said, but it's all of them will be there. They said, all of them will be there. And I said, do I mind about the place? From one place to the other. I don't mind. I want to speak to those people. And I fired them because I was so outraged and said, you people, you have been here managing conflicts and you forgot the mandate of the Security Council. The Security Council is there to prevent conflict. Can you tell me how many times you have sat at Security Council to discuss prevention of conflict? And they will all look at me like that. But to cut the story short, when I say examples of persuasion, it was the first time when we took children to be discussed in the Security Council. Because they were not, impact of conflict, it was in numbers, with people, refugees and displaced and those casualties who have been killed. To bring the face of a child to Security Council to say, this is it, what we are talking about, impact of conflict. We did it with my colleagues, some of them are here. And why did we do this? That child in that feeding scheme never left my mind until today. I see that child. And the conviction of what I do, examples of how we do, it's precisely because behind me, there are faces and voices, actually, and voices. Another example, I'm talking to Palestinian children who are refugees in Lebanon. And when I'm about to leave, and one of the boys, he should be 14, he said, Mrs. Machel, you say you are going to present a report, you are going to talk to Security Council, to the General Assembly, and all these things. But can you tell me something? I said, what? When is this conflict going to end? You hear me? And today, Palestinian people are still exactly in the same place, and the refugees, probably that young man who asked me this is still a refugee. He has not been able to go back. That's why I cannot stop to be a social activist for children. Because of those voices. It's those voices, those eyes which give you the courage then to say, I don't care. Let me give you an example. When I was negotiating this issue of talking to Security Council, I speak to a young man who is in political affairs. And I said, I really need, it's very important, I need to speak to these people. And he said, what Security Council has to do with children? I said, what? I think you should pack and go home. If you do not know what children has to do with Security Council, then maybe you shouldn't be here. To cut this story short again, we changed the way we present the report. It changed the way United Nations look at children in conflict. For the first time, they established a special representative for children in conflict. For the first time, the Secretary General himself has to give clear command to every single person who represents him in situation of conflict and report to him directly on children. We changed the institutions. Yes, we did change institutions. We forced, and that's the, so, but when I say this, it's not for me to take the credit that I'm a powerful person as we are discussing. It's to say, if you take the voices and the aspirations of people you serve seriously, then you have the strength really to confront institutions, even to change them. That's what I mean by this. So it's not a personal power you have. It's a power of the cause you represent and the way you take seriously to say, it's not about me, it's about the millions of kids, it's about the millions of women. And of course, in this, the girl child always being, the transformative, social group, which I believe, if we gain, to empower the girl child, our societies are going to be much, much, much different in future if we talk of social justice, as you were talking. Yeah. So these are the examples I could,
I think you should take credit. I think you should take credit. And I think the audience in this room, everyone who's come today, everyone who's in this conference, isn't there a moment right now, I feel there's a moment right now, where the child, where the girl child and her rights have never been so clear for us.
Exactly.
Have never been so clear in what we have to do from when they are really small, when they have a lesser chance of surviving than boys do, from when they want to go to school, when they don't have the same chances of actually going to school, primary, secondary school, and from the fact that they don't have the same access to be protected as boys do. We all understand that so clearly now, and I feel that this conference, other gatherings that we have had, is a push, a moment that we should seize and see everything we do from the child's perspective. If we promise each other this is what we're going to leave this conference with, and you do the same, we can make that change.
Absolutely, 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 absolutely.
See, Toyin, that's a very specific strategy of how to wield your power. Getting the Security Council to leave the Security Council and then go next door and still get what you want. That's kind of amazing. I'm not sure we can all replicate it.
Yes.
In fact, I'm convinced we can't. But what is your strategy for getting what you want done?
You know, for me, I have always believed in the power of multiples. So when I started to actually lift my voice, it was because I realized that I wasn't actually the only one in the world that was suffering something. And my husband became a governor, and I was going to funerals. I was going to too many funerals of women who had just delivered. And I was burying too many babies, you know. And I began to discuss it with the women around, because when we went to Kwara, I met a lot of women's groups on the ground, but they were all older women. And I wanted younger women to form groups because it was easier to help women if they were already in a group or a cooperative or an association. They were self-disciplining, self-supporting, making friends. And I just realized actually that if I saw something and I wanted to test whether it was good, I would ask the women, what do you think of this? And they would discuss it amongst themselves. And if they wanted it, before I knew what, I would have an army of women ready to push for a particular cause. And they would have taken it, they would have tailored it to what fit their own community. So there was very little convincing. I know it would look like, oh, Toyin said maternal mortality and the whole country rallied behind her, but actually we all identified with the cause. And so I actually just made myself a platform. It's not that I was particularly powerful. And the interesting thing actually is that because I'm Yoruba and I'm not supposed to speak out, some people would listen to me only to attack me. Like I remember once I did a documentary on domestic violence, which is something that was never ever discussed or reported in the Nigerian press. And I knew it was going on. I had my figures. I did the documentary. The amount of men in Nigeria, and even women, that went to the internet to descend on my head. And you know, Nigerians have a saying that it's the person that wears the shoe that knows where the shoe is pinching. So they believe that if you speak out, that shoe must be pinching you. Yeah. And I remember they said, oh, well, her husband must be beating her, otherwise she will never speak about this. And I just felt, well, why can't I be my sister's keeper? You know, I heard a quote the other day that there's a sisterhood in motherhood. Why must somebody have to suffer something before wanting to change that thing for the better? But today, every day I open the newspaper, I see such and such beat his wife and his wife has cried out. So now we're stopping that silence in Nigeria. We're talking about it, and then we can move towards action.
Femi, can I say something? Listening to the different stories of us here, I think there's one element which is common. One is the social movements, building social movements. All of us in different ways, in different platforms, etc. The second element which is powerful to effect change is to connect the social movements with those who make decisions.
Yes.
All of us, if we can claim some kind of success, it's precisely because we use the positions in which we are to connect the two and to demand change from those who have to make decisions, or they hold the position power to say, these are the voices, these are the requirements, these are the aspirations of groups in which then, if you present The other thing which is very important, for you to convince them, you have to talk evidence. Yes. If you talk only in terms of principles with no evidence, it's not going to touch them. The third element related to this also is to say, you know, you have to turn that you are not doing a favor to this. It's in your own interest to take this agenda as yours. Because if you, suppose it's a politician, right? The only way you are going to be kept where you are is you take into account this, because these are the people who are going to vote on you. So sometimes it's not necessarily because they understand the human rights and et cetera, but they need to protect their positions, and you have to make them feel that without the position, without taking into account the interests of these people, this position is at risk. But you know what is the good thing? Is at the moment then you build the social movement, this social movement is going to dethrone him. The social movements are going to force him to change, because they are going to take control of their own situation. Take the issue of the girl child in education. Some of you who remember, there was a time girl child in education was not very popular. People didn't take us seriously. But today, you don't find any government which dares to say that education is not a right for girl child. They write it. Now you say, okay, show me now where is the money? How, when you approve your budget, how do you attend to needs of these children, as children totally, but also of the girl child? Where is the money for women to meet their rights? This kind of dialogue in which I believe we are here just as intermediaries in the middle of those who decide, those who are social movements, to raise the issues and to be persuasive in the way we raise. That's what you can call, if you like, powerful women, in my view.
I agree.
So one other piece which I think is sort of a thread here, and it's something that's really important in the US, so I just want to lift it up as an opportunity. I didn't mean to make it sound like things are going well in the United States when it comes to reproductive access and women's rights. There's been a huge backlash, as I think folks know, and in many states, it's virtually impossible to access reproductive care. I do think the thing that's changed, and I think a couple of elements have really led to this are, one is social media and the ability to get women's voices up in a way they have never been up before in our lifetime. And the other is the real willingness of people to come out of the shadows now and shout their stories about being abortion providers, about their own experience. I know one of my friends here, Dr. Willie Parker from Mississippi, is here as one of the most brave leaders in the abortion rights movement. But what we're seeing now is an unwillingness of a whole new generation to be shamed and stigmatized, whether it's about domestic violence, whether it's about sexual assault. And to me, that is the thing that's going to change. It's not just the politics. It's going to change because women's stories are finally lifted up. I mean, granted, kicking and screaming. It's not like, folks are looking for it. But I'll give you one specific example that just happened I was in Pennsylvania, which is a state that is kind of shifts politically, but there was an attempt to pass a very restrictive abortion bill. And 3 women had a press conference there, and for the first time publicly told very deeply personal stories about their decisions to end a pregnancy. And all of their stories, it would have been impossible for those women to have those rights if this bill had passed. And that bill was pulled down that day, that afternoon. And to me, it was just a reminder of the fact that people's stories and women telling their stories and putting a real non-stigma, non-shameful face on what our women's lived experience is what's going to change, I believe, the culture and also help change the politics.
Do you feel that you're doing that every day? Do you feel that that's what's happening?
I don't think enough. I mean, I think there is still, the young woman who spoke earlier about the shame that young women feel about their periods. There is still so much shame that from a very early age women feel, but they do get power from other people telling their stories. And I know that for my own self. I published my own abortion story in Elle magazine. And that was, I didn't really know that it was going to be important, but it is in that women come up to me now will see me on the street and say, thank you for telling me your story, now I want to tell you mine. And I do think that that's something that people who are in a position, whether they're medical providers or women who can give people permission to be open about their lives, it's a huge difference in the US. We haven't ever done it really effectively before.
If you want to be strong woman, powerful woman, you should be the voice of people, all people. You should be the voice of citizen, all citizen. I believe if any woman corner herself and just in women's right, she will lose it. So it's the first important thing is to struggle for fundamental rights. I'll give you just one example. In Yemen, in 22 January of 2011, there was Helen Clark. She's the manager of UNDP. She visited Yemen, and she gathered all Yemeni women, and she asked us, tell us what you want as a woman to have your rights in your country. And I just came from the demonstrations. We started our peaceful revolution at that time. And every woman told her, we want quota, we want a lot of things, in economic field. And I told her just one word. I told her, if you want to give women right, you should be with us on giving Yemeni human right. If you want to give us women's right, you have to be with us on human rights. You have to be with us on table this tyranny, this dictator who put all the walls in front of the face of women. I lived this conference, and at that time they took me to the prison. They arrested me. But my voice, when they arrested me, reached to everybody in Yemen. Then the millions of Yemeni people go to the street, make peaceful revolution, forced the dictator to resign after 1 year peaceful revolution. Why do I say this thing? I didn't ask anyone for my leadership. While the people put me in the corner of traditional rule, they told me you have to be in the kitchen, or you have to, if you want to play public role, you have to just work with women, with a women environment. I told them, no, I went to the street. I just took my microphone. Only women, take calling people, Yemeni people, wake up, people, wake up. They were laughing at me, but after that, they follow me. Women and men. This is the first victory that I did. I'm not saying because this is for all of us. If you want change, lead it. If you want improvement, lead it. After that, after a great peaceful revolution, for a long time we call the dictator, just please give us right in the law. Please give us right in the constitution. But when we throw him out, we wrote the constitution, we wrote that we have the right for 30%. That was in the constitution. We wrote it as a woman because we led the change.
All right, so hold on a minute.
Yes.
What bit of the constitution was, like if we looked it up, would we find Tawakkol wrote this? Like what bit of it is you in there that we would find?
In the constitution?
Yes. What bit did you do?
Again, the same answer that I said yesterday.
Okay.
Every article in the constitution is my article, is my goal, because democracy is something belong to women. It doesn't good for women to say, okay, 30% of seats, it's our victory. No, democracy, accountability, rule of law, freedom, everything, it's the affair of women. So this is the best victory that we did in the draft. Just me and the details.
Yes.
The details, which is we put, and this is the big.
Yes.
victory.
All right. Go on. Big finish.
Yeah.
Go for it.
The second, we put in the constitution that 30%. I can't say it in English. Yeah, 30% for it must for every in the field it must be for women. For example, early marriage. I heard all of you, early marriage, early marriage. Before the revolution, we just asked their authority, please, forbidden the early marriage. But when we throw him out, we put in the constitution, early marriage is forbidden, and anyone who will force his, for forced marriage or early marriage, he will be sanctioned. Yeah. Even we did in the constitution, we determined the 18 years old as the age of childhood. And that is the victory of women who been in the front line and said, dictator has to leave, corruption has to leave. Final thing, this is a good story for us, but you have to know, with all this story of women, we still sacrificing from counter-revolution. Now the militia and the ousted president make counter-revolution against this draft of the constitution. But will we as women, as youth, as people, give up? No. We will continue our way for achieving our dream and our goal, and you will see how democracy will be in our countries, and how will you see a very soon president woman in our countries.
For me, really, it wasn't about raising a voice very loud. I really wanted to see the impact in life saved. And no matter how much I raise my voice, I will go back home and people say, we heard your speech. Your speech is really nice. Now, what difference is that going to make to the woman giving birth in the village? And so I went and I said, who are the people who can really make this difference? And I realized it's the person that none of us ever knows the name. I think every mother in this room has delivered, and everybody remembers the name of their doctor. And nobody remembers the name of their midwife. But their midwife has been with them through the pregnancy, and is usually the first hand that holds the baby, and is usually the first eye. That your midwife sees your baby before you do, because they help you bring it out, and they put it on your chest. And I just thought, well, bingo. Now I can begin to keep quiet. And I went to go and meet the midwives. I said, please work with me. How many do you have? And they said, oh, we have 131 countries. And I said, fantastic. And what can we do? And they showed me the 5 pillars, the training. And then I said, okay. And I started traveling from country to country to see, what was happening to the midwives there, to raise their profile, raise their vision. And then something very interesting. I was coming from Suriname, and Suriname actually feels like a state in Nigeria, the mixture of religions and everything. And I saw this wonderful conference they did and the training, and I said, I'm going to do this in my country. So I went back and I said to my team, we're going to have a conference. We're going to have a global midwifery conference. And I called for the Nigerian midwives, and they told me they just wanted to go to an IDP camp and give out mama kits. And this is, sometimes you're a victim of your own success, because I'm the one who put together these safe delivery kits called mama kits for Nigeria. I have 3 versions. And I thought, no. I don't want you to just go out and give safe delivery kits to refugees. I want you to learn the things that the midwives all over the world are learning. But the secret, actually, when I felt validated that I was on the right track, was when the president of our midwifery council, who had actually fought against having emergency obstetric newborn training at a conference in one day, she thought it couldn't be done, actually registered for the training and was the first to collect her certificate. And the midwives in Nigeria now got up and they were saying proudly, I'm a midwife, this is what I do. So actually for me, success will be measured by when I don't have to speak. Because I actually only speak out when I really see social injustice that I can't tolerate. Success will be measured by the life saved, by the investment into every newborn child, by every country that has realized that they will be judged by how they treat their pregnant women and newborn children. And also that hope that for every new pregnant woman and every newborn, it's a fresh chance for all of us in all our countries to get it right and add value to life. And I have to say, I'm a big proponent of the girl child, but I also have to say, what about the boys? Because we don't want to leave them behind. We really don't want to leave the boys behind. We want balanced and happy people.
So, we have 1.5 minutes left in our quality conversation. And I would love you to leave this room and everybody who watches this conversation, your advice for being a powerful leader? Helle, you start.
Yes, I had listened very carefully to the discussion, and I want us to leave the room with the notion, first of all, it is possible to change things. But it means that we have to attack these issues in many ways. And I think it's all been said today. I'll try to sum it up if you will let me. I think we have to have the legislation. We have to have the constitution and the legislation to do this. But unfortunately, that is not enough. We also have to have the financing. All governments have to set aside financing to make these things happen. And the international community have to back that. But that is not enough either. We also have to have women accounted for. Physically counted, but also have their voice in policy making. Women have to matter in policy making, but that is not enough either. We also have to have the real life stories, the anecdotes, the experiences of women brought to the political table, so the real life stories can change things, because only then will we start changing hearts and minds and cultures, and these 4 factors are the factors of change. And the great news is we have come very far. The discussion we have now is far beyond anything that we have now globally. The great news is how far we've come, how honest we are with each other. So that means that change can happen, it will come, but it needs for all of us to work on all these 4 areas. Then we can make the change.
All right, so save your applause for the end. We are going to have a big finish. Toyin,
Yes.
very quickly, the thought for anyone here watching you, how to be a powerful leader. Finish the sentence.
Listen. You can't be a leader if you don't have followers. And if you want your followers to believe in you, you actually have to listen. Leadership is a reflection of your people's strengths, weaknesses, and needs, and satisfying those with a solution. So every leader must listen.
I feel I know the answer to this. I hope it's a short answer.
Okay, this is a big challenge for me. Don't afraid, break all walls around you, work for all people.
I agree with everything that's been said, but I guess I would add that we have to build political power as women. We can't be afraid of it, and if we ever have political equity, we will take care of 99% of the problems that we've talked about today. So build political power.
My experience is that leadership is something which is the people you serve acknowledge on you. You don't decide that I am a leader. The best way, if young people here want to become leaders, is align your mind and your heart with aspirations of the people you want to serve, and they will recognize you as a leader.
Absolutely.
I just want to leave you with one more example of power and a woman wielding power. The reason we are all here, Women Deliver, in Denmark, is because of... Thank you so much for wielding your influence and your power. And we just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you to Women Deliver. They delivered.
So, Plenary Hall A, make it easy for the powerful women to exit the stage. I think it's going to take about 20 seconds of loud applause and cheering. Go for it.
Okay, all right. It's so great to be with